Hello and welcome to some time with John and myself. And we're going to be talking on the topic of personal branding. I'll do an introduction screen, John, and it might be a good idea if we quickly introduce ourselves. So folk can guess from that picture about which one's you, which one's me, I think. Go ahead. Tell us a bit about yourself, John, and I'll do the same, then we'll move on.
My name's John Earls. I'm director of Goodfoot. I've worked with you for a couple of years now on various projects, developing training programs, working with managers and companies to develop efficiencies and productivity in the business. My main area is developing personal skills and psychology around getting to know ourselves better. And once we know ourselves better, how can we use that then to influence and inspire people? So that's a little bit about me.
That's great. And I'm Mark Miller, and also director of Goodfoot with John. And my background has been projects, technical projects, and then into running Goodfoot for some time now, and doing persuasive bids, selling, negotiations, and branding is now the persuasiveness of the individual is part of what we cover too. So we thought we'd put some quick thoughts together on it, John, right? And we've got a slide deck to kind of steer us. You'd be delighted there's only 3 slides in this thing, really, but the information we hope is really, really interesting. And we're going to start off with Johari, John. Is that right? Our blind spots.
Yeah, so the way I see blind spots is that there's areas that we don't know about ourselves. You know, we may sort of be aware, but other people may pick up on them. Other people may not pick up on them, but there's certainly things that aspects of our personality, maybe mannerisms, maybe even behaviours that we're not aware of, that have the ability to influence other people and also influence ourselves. If we don't know about it, we can't do anything about them.
And if we're building our personal branding, and this is why we're starting off with this, John, right? If we're building a branding, we have to know what we are communicating to others that we're good at and that we're branded at. Or branded as, I'm sorry. And it is definitely true that we can find out from other people, as I build this slide now, we can find out from other people information which hopefully makes our blind spot and an unknown shrink. Would that be right? So that we are more aware of the skills that others think that we've got. That's a prerequisite to branding. This is what we're saying.
Yeah, 100%, Mark. You know, I remember the first thing I was spoken to about when it came to marketing and personal branding, and it was simply this: get your elevator pitch really succinct, because our elevator pitch amplifies all the things that make us special, our USPs. But you have to know yourself really well as a personal brand to be able to do that. If you've got a lot of blind spots, then you're not knowing yourself, and that's the thing to do. Get to know yourself, get to know what your blind spots are, and then leverage them into an elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way to find out about the unknown to self bit is by asking, right? So it's just by asking colleagues, look, how do I come across? How do I appear to you? What do you think I'm good at? And it's surprising when sometimes, and I have heard this said, well, you're really good at supporting people. And the person that was told this said, what, really? Yeah, you're really good at support. I didn't think I was. I thought I was really good at the technical stuff. No, you're brilliant at supporting people. You're always there. You always get stuff done on time. Oh, that's interesting. That's possibly part of their branding that they weren't aware of. So the stuff that others experience contributes to our branding. So don't just jump into personal branding thinking, this is what I'm good at and this is what I want my brand to be. Do some thinking, research, conversations, get some feedback, how we are perceived, and that then starts to formulate, now this is how I can begin to brand myself.
There's an important online branding tip. I came across it after our training event actually a few weeks ago. How do you get to know yourself really well on an online space? Well, Google yourself. Just simply Google Mark Miller or John Earls and see what comes up. It's really interesting because what comes up there, okay, it's not maybe your personality, but it's your online personality and your online branding. So once you get an awareness of what other people are seeing in a digital space, you can start to bring that back into, okay, I'm Mark Miller, I'm somebody who's supportive. Is that the image that's coming across online? Because if it's not, you need to bring those two things together.
That's a really, really good point. And all of this slide then, John, is leading us to, before you decide on your personal branding, get some data and get some feedback from others and some data that gives you where you an area of where you're going to focus your branding. What we then move on to is the classical USPs, John, right? What is different about me? Now, the number of CVs I've read, and we've all read, which say I'm extremely diligent, I'm a good team worker, I'm technically competent, and we all yawn at these, don't we? Because people are just describing the general about what they're like and what they do, and everybody that I know is good at what they do. They're trying hard at what they do.
Yeah.
But the point about brand is it's distinctive. Is that right? And for me, the actual distinctive things is not what my skills are, but what have I achieved and how did I do it? And a list of what have I done in my life and how did I go about making that happen is actually very, very close to what our brand is going to become, because that's the kernel of what's making us unique. It's not your degree, it's not the fact that we're good engineers or that we're good salespeople. It's more for me to do with what have we achieved and how did we do that? What's your thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, it was only a very simple thought, and it was around the how. And for me, yeah, we all have different things that make us unique in terms of different skills. I mean, I'm doing a PhD in burnout. That's something that's personal to me. You know, you were a maths teacher, weren't you?
I was. My first job ever was a maths teacher.
Yeah, so that's something unique to you, but it's not unique. You know, there's lots of people out there doing degrees and PhDs and maths teachers and all. But I think it's exactly right. It's how do you do that? And that's the important thing. Is John Earls is doing this, and he's managing his family, and he's working with Mark, and he's doing these. This is the how. We start to get a sense of somebody who's able to balance multiple projects, you know, and be able to perform to the highest level. So this sort of how, I think, is the really important thing to bring through. And I think that's going back to the elevator pitch. When we do an elevator pitch, it's not just a list of stuff. Who cares about that? Well, how are you going to do it? That's the special bit. That's the stuff.
Yeah, and if we think then, how do I get things done? You know, what's my style? That's starting to get close to your personal branding. So it may be personal branding of the type that I'm very good at specifying what's needed and bringing it in on time. That's my branding. But if you're a creative type, that won't be your branding. It'll probably be, I'm very good at generating options, thoughts, and ideas and looking at things from a different angle. And that's the branding. So you're right. It's how do I approach working life rather than what is my skill set?
Yes.
And that is always unique because it's always got our personalities with it, which is perfect because we're all unique. We're all different, which is why our branding can be unique. Back to the screen then for the last slide. And this is how can we get started and how can we decide, look, I want to promote my personal branding. I want to encourage it and I want to develop it. So we came up with this a while back, didn't we, John, about a planning tool to begin to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's important that once we understand, you know, the how, we're getting into the arena of knowing ourselves better. You know, doing something like a disc analysis or something that starts to unpick a little bit about, you know, what your behaviours are and how do you operate. Starts to go into what I think is very important for personal branding. It's values. So we start to understand, okay, what do we want? You know, I want to work with Mark because he's an amazing guy. Okay, that's part of my values. You know, we connect. So I think that first layer on the outside of the wheel, who do I want to know? You can only know that if you know what you are, who you are, where you're going. Once you know that, then you can identify, right, okay, I want to work with Mark because and then you can align it back in. So I think this circle is really important, and I would focus on that first one a little bit more than the others, because you can only get with the first one.
I think that's smart, yeah, and I think it's smart because you said you wanted to work with me, so I think that's incredibly smart. Yeah, and but yeah, I get your drift here. That the goal of personal branding really is who do I want to know. That's the whole goal of it, because when we know the people that we want to know, we get the connections in the openings. That's the purpose of branding. So actually targeting, well, who do I want to know anyway? You know, either individuals or groups in the organization is really, really critical. To use the tool, for your own sort of thought dump, start off with the central one. We would suggest, this is me. And certainly the second bullet, write down in that central one, this is me, what your character is. This is back to, you know, how I approach my life, my work, rather than just skills and abilities, but how do I go about things? And then it's who do I know around me? And these are the works and personal groups and the people that I'm involved with. I want to start communicating my branding to them or getting feedback and then branching out to who do I want to know. The beauty about this, John, is if you are a planner, which we all should be from time to time, you can put timescales on this, right? Can't we? We can say, look, I'm going to get that central one nailed in the next week. I'm going to get descriptions of what my brand is. Then what I'm going to do is talk to people I know about how I come over, what I can improve in the next 3 months, over the next 3 months. And then in the next 6 months, in 6 months time, or 3 months time, sorry, to 6 months, I'm going to start contacting named people that I want to know. So you can use this as a very clear timetable, John, is that right?
Yeah, I think unless you categorize and then you put some timeframes, objectives around it, it won't get done. And that's a simple truth. Yeah, you have to identify and then project forward, target it. Yeah.
And the final word that I would probably like to add to this is, if you're thinking of personal branding, it's a marketing plan. You know, all marketing happens according to a plan of marketing, which is what's my USP, what's my message, my target market, what's my vehicles, what's my monitoring mechanism. And as you say, John, exactly right. Hoping for a good personal brand or identifying it is really just the start. We need a plan to execute it and propagate it, which is a marketing plan, which is what that last slide was intended to encourage us to do.
You've hit on the thought. I remember speaking to somebody around their personal branding. He was a business guy, and whilst for his business he would brand and he would market, he would set agendas and targets, and very, very successful. But when he came to himself, he almost was a little offended that I'd asked him to use the same methodology to him. And I think that was an important learning curve for me, because I think, and me included, we get a little bit sensitive maybe around, this is my personal brand. I don't want this to be business. This is more about feelings. And you're right, of course it is. The emotion is important, but you still have to structure it in a methodological way that's got a clear outcome. Otherwise, like you said, it's not a marketing plan.
Absolutely. So there are our thoughts on personal branding. We'd just like to say thank you to everybody. A quick final slide saying thank you to everybody. And I hope that very much that I'll just close that off. Here we go. I hope very much that everybody found some tips and some thoughts in it. John, thanks for sharing the time with me and sharing our thoughts. And we look forward to doing another subject some other time, which I'm sure will not be too long to go.